Welcome to the Kevin and Jason Show, presented by the good people at Cover One. My name is Jason Shannon. No Kevin Masseri here today. He is on vacation, and I'm actually about to take mine. I'll be away for the weekend. I will be watching the Bills play at Carolina at 7 p.m. on Friday from Patriots Country. I'll be in Providence, Rhode Island that night, but I will still be there watching with a Hawks eye to see basically how our team's going to do and what we're going to be talking about on the show on Monday. So while Kevin enjoys the beach, I will be doing this quick and lean show where we're going to get a preview for the aforementioned preseason game. I'm pretty excited about it. It's week 2. Usually you're going to see a little more than week 1. And I'm going to give you 5 things to watch for this game, 5 specific things. If you get a little bonus content, consider it a bonus. But I'm going to give you some of the thoughts that I have, some of the things to watch in this game, both on the Bills side and a little bit of Panthers stuff too. I think preseason's also interesting for fantasy purposes, where you get to watch the other team, maybe in a situation where you weren't going to in the first place. But now that they're playing against the Bills, you get to see how they match up against familiar foes. So I'm going to start out with thing number 1. Number 1, most interesting thing that I'm looking forward for this game on Friday at 7 p.m. at Carolina, the offensive line. The last few days during the joint practices, we saw a starting offensive line of Dawkins, Spain, John Feliciano, Cody Ford, Ty Nsekhe from left to right. Obviously, there's battles up and down the depth chart as far as that goes. We saw a really good game out of Wyatt Teller in the first preseason game. More guys like Spencer Long who can kind of work in between center and guard. He probably will see some center action. I thought like Boker was good in the last game. And, we were just really trying to figure out what our 9 is right now. Russell Bodine is still on this team, but seems to be injured. I believe he's still in the protocol. Obviously, Mitch Morse is still in the protocol, so John Feliciano is not the expected center going into the season. But it is nice to see if he would be able to fill in a pinch. I'm probably somewhere in the middle between the people who are worried about Morse and think that it's okay. He seems to be progressing along pretty well and is doing some practice activities in practice, but he's had a history. This wasn't his first concussion. He's had some injury problems. You're just worried. I'm worried about reoccurrence. I'm not worried about him getting back out there. He's obviously going to be out there week 1. There's almost no chance he's going to play in this game in week 2. I don't even know if I'd really want to see him week 3. But I am excited to see him. I've actually gone on a little journey and have been watching through a lot of the 2017 regular season since I purchased Game Pass, and you get to see the old games and the full games and those condensed games where they cut them down to a neat 40 minutes are really convenient. And I saw it was the opening game. A lot of people probably remember it, where the Kansas City Chiefs upset the New England Patriots on opening night. It was a breakout game for Tyreek Hill. Kareem Hunt's first game of his career. He had over 140 rushing yards, I believe, and really broke out that game. But Morse was just a monster and really beat up the Patriots in that game. You got to see a lot of him doing stuff on the second level, a lot of mauling, even stuff in pass protection where he looked really good and protected Alex Smith at the time. So that definitely made me more excited because I definitely wasn't watching that game in 2017 solely with Mitch Morse on my mind. I was watching the breakout performances of Kareem Hunt and Tyreek Hill and rooting for the Patriots to lose. So that really did create some expectations for me. But back to the offensive line, I just want to see how that group gels, what we do with Cody Ford, whether we're going to maybe use him on the right guard on the first team, then maybe push him back out to right tackle on the second team. It's interesting. Jaron Jones is also a new guy on the team. Ryan Bates is also new on the team. Those guys are going to get opportunities, and I think that it's just going to be interesting. And they're going to face a pretty decent test. Maybe not those backups, but as far as the starters go, Carolina is a team, and you saw it during practice. They have Gerald McCoy, K'Wan Short, Dontari Poe. They have Bruce Irvin coming off the edge. They have Brian Burns coming off the edge, who had 2 sacks in his preseason debut. So I think that's going to be really something to watch out for, and it's going to be a staunch test, even for the starters, who some of those guys are solidified, but you want to see Nsekhe have another good performance, and you certainly want to see Cody Ford start to emerge as a player that you can rely on, whether that's going to be at right guard or right tackle. It certainly looks like it's in the cards for him to start at this point. So I want to see those battles, and I'm excited to see it. Next, back end of the wide receiver depth chart is interesting. It's always interesting in the preseason. I would say that's usually among the most interesting positions. In past years, it's been who's going to be our second or third receiver when we were talking about guys like Andre Holmes and talking about Jeremy Curleys and, whether Robert Foster or Cam Phillips will make the team as undrafteds. Our top 4 or 5, I think some people have some doubts about maybe Foster won't make the team. I think they would be really idiots unless he gives them some really crazy reason to cut him. I just think the guy has too much talent, and you have to at least roster him, even if he's not having the best preseason. But he's going to be a guy to still to watch in the preseason, and if he can make any big plays. But when you're talking about wide receiver 6, which I think they'll choose to keep 6, with Andre Roberts as 5 as a special teams guy and a guy that can occasionally get you some offensive production. You got McLeod, you have Cam Phillips, who scored a touchdown in the preseason opener from Matt Barkley. You have Isaiah McKenzie, who has looked good on the field and really has looked good on the field, last year too. He's a gamer. You saw the stuff in Bills Embedded where he was a little annoying, but in the end, that's a 10-second clip. It wasn't the best edit of him, but that was a really small portion of time, and maybe that's indicative of how he acts or people feel about him in other situations all day during practice and all of the practices. But I'm not going to take too much that he's going to get cut or that he even has a bad personality based on a small chunk of time. And then you have guys like, Victor Bolden's still there. Haven't seen much out of him. Duke Williams, a lot of people had expectations for, but really hasn't broken into the second team at all. Is really kind of in that back end bunch with David Sills. And then Nick Easley, who had a nice little highlight play, and the videos going around from practices yesterday, I believe. And figures to work into the slot too. Probably not compete for the team, but after McLeod and after McKenzie and obviously Beasley, he's going to get some look at the slot receiver position, and is a potential guy to make the practice squad when I'm not sure that anybody thought that he would be the type of guy that would make it over Sills or the other guys that have, Cam Phillips still has eligibility. You would assume that those guys are going to be over Nick Easley as a much less heralded guy, but he really has a chance, and he's looked good in practices. I thought he was fairly notable in the practice that I went to a couple weeks ago, and I think he'll start getting some looks as well. Next is that 4th DN battle. This is thing number 3, if you're keeping track of the 5 things that I'm looking forward to for this game. We have Daryl Johnson, who had a sack last week, is a drafted player. You have Mike Love, who I think a lot of people slotted in as DN4 soon after practice started, and people, he was really notable. And then you have Eddie Yarbrough, who's the guy who's made the team the last 2 years, who's less of a dynamic presence, but is a big physical player, seems to be really good in practice, occasionally performs on the field, and has been a guy that the coaches are familiar with, and originally made the team as an undrafted free agent. So you have those 3 guys there battling for 1, maybe 2 spots. Right now, if I had to do a roster projection, I would have Daryl Johnson and Mike Love making the team as the 4th and 5th guys. If Daryl Johnson proves to be truly the 4th best DN here, Mike Love might be, more than you need. But I think that if you really wanted to have Mike Love as your 4th defensive end, I think that Daryl Johnson shows the athleticism and the burst. He actually provides something different than bigger guys like Yarbrough, like Lawson, like Murphy, and could be a dynamic type of player that you would want to stash, that you don't want to just lose because he wasn't better than a couple veterans right off the jump. So I wouldn't keep a 5th person if your 5th person was Yarbrough, but I think for a drafted player, and I know he's a 7th round pick, not all of them make the team, but clearly they scouted him, they thought he was worth drafting. I think you give him a little bit of a benefit of the doubt when you're putting together this team. So I think that's an interesting thing to do, and hopefully we get after the quarterback. And I will be talking in a few minutes about part of their offensive line that we might be able to exploit, and we probably will see a lot of in this game. So we're going to see how these guys stack up against a new team. They looked pretty good against the Colts. The Colts are known for having a great offensive line, even if not necessarily the backups, but certainly the starting five. But the Colts have put a big emphasis on creating that offensive line, and looking fairly good against it was, our whole defense looked good against their offense. That was an encouraging sign. You wanted to see that keep going forward. Thing number 4, TJ Yeldon. He fumbled last game, and he got yanked from the game. And now TJ Yeldon is a guy that a lot of people don't think is going to make the team after being a second-round pick by Jacksonville, being, a borderline fantasy football relevant player, a really good player at Alabama, an adequate backup when Leonard Fournette got into his problems and injuries, and definitely extended himself and improved himself as a pass catcher so far in his career. I was excited by the pick because he offers that pass catching option that I don't think we had quite enough of in camp and on this roster. So I always like to see that. So I am rooting for him. I've thought that he is a little tall and runs a little straight up, which I think some of those guys have problems getting through the interior line and not fumbling the ball. And he got the ball stripped on his second carry last game. So, I want to see more of him. I kind of wish that they gave him more of a chance, but if they went in there and said, hey, we're going to yank anybody that fumbles the ball, that's a potential game-losing play. We have 3 or 4 guys behind you. Obviously, when you see a play like Christian Wade come in and have that huge run for the touchdown on his only touch of the game, Sonoris Perry looking okay. You still have Marcus Murphy there. They might have been like, we just don't have the time for a fourth running back fumbling. We have to go through guys 5 through 7. So I wanted to see him get significant amount of time. Again, the front 7 of this team is pretty good. Definitely in the starters. I think that this is going to be probably a lot more Yeldon, or they're going to try to do that unless he fumbles again. Then I don't know what they're going to do. But, they have Singletary, who played well. It's pretty apparent that Singletary is going to be in the top 3 running backs for this team. He just looks shifty. He looks dynamic. He doesn't quite look fast, but he does. He just has that runner's vision and mentality. You can see it right away. You could see it at FAU. But if Yeldon shows well, he still can find his way on this team because none of them are fantastic pass catchers. McCoy's pretty good at that, but he can't be on the field all the time anymore. I'm not even sure he's going to get 50% of the carries for this team. I think he's going to be the presumed and preferred starter, but I think a lot of guys are going to be running the ball and lining up out of the backfield for this team. So I'm hoping that we get to see, and I hope he gets to maximize his potential, because honestly, I'm rooting for him because I think we need that type of player. I'd rather have that type of player than Sonoris Perry, who is going to mostly do your special teams duties, even if he did have the good catch in the first preseason game and has apparently done pretty well catching the football in training camp and in practice. So Yeldon, hoping for a good game out of you, bud. Number 5, Captain Munnerlyn. It's going to be just interesting. He's playing against a team that he played for a while, not too long ago. There's a lot of Bills and Carolina connections as far as this goes on both teams. It's not just the Bills taking Carolina players. Carolina's doing it vice versa, and I have a list in a second. But there, with the EJ gains going down, there is a spot on this team for a cornerback to make it. It'll be, Saran Neal is probably on this team. It's probably the backup nickel. So I don't know if you need a third nickel guy. On the outside, Levi Wallace and Trey White are making this team. Kevin Johnson probably is. And then there probably is a space there where EJ Gaines is supposed to be. And that's where Cam Lewis, who's been pretty much elevated to the second team, at least for now. You have Denzel Rice, Lafayette Pitts, mostly on special teams, and Ryan Lewis, who didn't play too well in the Week 1 game. Where does Munnerlyn fit? Maybe he's going to be jacked up for this game, just playing old teammates. There were a lot of videos and pictures of him, hanging out with guys that he had just been a part of, not too long ago. So that is a debut for him. It's always interesting when you have a veteran coming in and how he's going to assimilate and how quickly it is going to be for him to sort of rev up to the point where he's really competing for the team. I don't think he's like an assumed guy that's definitely going to make the team, but I think that they signed him with the hope that he's almost like for like with EJ Gaines, which I don't know if that's the case skill-wise, but certainly if EJ Gaines, he's never been a guy that's stayed on the field, so maybe this is going to end up being a net positive and you get a veteran in the locker room and somebody that can still do the job. So Captain Munnerlyn, I'll be interested in that. Point 6 of the 5 things I'm going to talk about in this game. Former Bills on Carolina. I just think it's always interesting when you see guys that were on this team, guys that had been drafted by us, or guys that had been in camp. I count 4 of them unless I'm missing any. They have Chris Hogan there, former lacrosse player at Penn State. I don't know if you know that. And former guy that was going to be a star for the Patriots. I don't know if you knew that either, but that didn't quite happen, and they let him go. And now he's trying to make the team with Carolina, which has a pretty interesting wide receiver battle down the field, or down the depth chart, that I'll be talking about in a second. Kevon Seymour at cornerback and Ross Cockrell at cornerback. I believe Seymour was a 7th round pick. He might have been a 6th a few years back. Ross Cockrell was a 4th. We let those guys both go earlier than probably people would have wanted out of those picks. Both of them showed a small amount of potential. Cockrell kind of went by and didn't really do much, and now he finds himself in the thick of trying to make this team, including potentially starting for the secondary, so that'll be interesting. And then the 4th guy I counted was Rashad Ross, who we had in our camp in 2017. Kind of a sneaky guy at wide receiver. I think that they're a little too deep at wide receiver right now that he's going to make the team, but he had a really good performance when he went and played in the AAF this offseason, and I think that's how he kind of got his name back on the map. But he was a pretty good receiver there, one of the handful of guys that have been signed across the league from that ill-fated half-a-season league, and he'll definitely get some time in this game, I'm assuming. I think they also have him doing some special teams duties. So Rashad Ross, that's our 4th guy, and that's all that I could count at this point. Number 7 of the 5 things I'm going to talk about in this game between the Carolina Panthers and the Buffalo Bills at 7 p.m. on Friday night. The receiver situation, this is going to be more of a fantasy pick here. DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel are the outside receivers. Right now they're the presumed 1 and 2 receivers for the Carolina Panthers. And they are both getting a lot of hype in this preseason, especially Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel is a burner. He's had some highlight plays in camp so far. He was a 2017 second-round pick, is sort of like we don't really know what to do with this guy. He played some running back, played some receiver. They didn't think he had any future at running back, and he's a burner, and they're expecting him to put up wide receiver 2 numbers. He's getting some fantasy football hype right now, and we'll see if he can really put it together, and you're probably going to get to see a little bit of that in this game. I'm assuming he's going to get some opportunities there. DJ Moore, I believe, was in the 800s in receiving last year, kind of came on late after starting not doing much. He was their 1st round pick last year, and I always liked him. I thought he was a really good wide receiver prospect in last year's draft, and when he was talked about as a 2nd or 3rd round pick, I thought that was massively underranking him, and he ended up going, I believe, in the low 20s, which I think is exactly where he should have gone. People are expecting him to improve on last season, and if he gets decent quarterback play, I do think that he could have a breakout year this year. The other people in their wide receiver room right now, you have the aforementioned Chris Hogan, Jarius Wright, who's bounced out of Minnesota but has had some productive moments. Longtime veteran and former speedster Torrey Smith, Aldrick Robinson, and 7th-round pick who I thought was underpicked last year from Georgia, Terry Godwin, who's probably at this point fighting to make the team. So he might see a lot of action in this game, as well as the aforementioned Rashad Ross. So receivers could, I don't think that their 3rd through 6th guys are anything special right now, but I would say that they are sort of all of them are in a competition, so that'll be interesting to see. Number 8 of the 5 things that I wanted to talk about, we have bonus content here now that we've gotten to 8. I guess 6 was bonus content, and so was 7. But number 8, Greg Little is on the other side. Cody Ford is on our side. They were picked, I believe, 1 pick apart, or is it 2 picks apart? Either way, Carolina had moved ahead of Buffalo to take a tackle. They had moved up in the draft, and Brandon Beane was deathly ill when he said, Carolina needs a tackle. Who knows them better than Brandon Beane? He was already there. Sean McDermott looking a little ill as well. And they took Greg Little, who was the guy that they did not want. They wanted Cody Ford. They were ecstatic when Greg Little went off the board. And Buffalo fans are going to be able to get their first peek to see if they were right to be ecstatic. And Carolina Panther fans are going to have the chance to see if they should be disappointed in the fact that their team traded ahead and took Greg Little, who's probably the rawer of the 2 prospects. I would say by the time we got to draft day, most people who were grading prospects probably had Greg Little behind Cody Ford, sometimes even significantly. I know a lot of people that were very low on him. Greg Little was a guy that went into into this last college season as a pretty firm second tackle on the board, 1st-round pick sort of guy, and really his play at Ole Miss never really matched that. I mean, the whole team's play sort of didn't really match that. But we'll be able to see where Greg Little is, along with where Cody Ford is, and see if there was a good decision made there. And that's all I have to say about that. Number 9 of the 5 things that I am looking forward to in this preseason game as I continue to roll solo. Cam Newton's going to get his first action. Probably. Most people are expecting it. He's going to get very little. But I think also it's going to be interesting as they have a backup quarterback battle too between their drafted player, Will Grier, day 2 pick, and Kyle Allen. Grier was not very good in the last one. And so I'll just say that if he does play like he did in the last preseason game, we may have some opportunity to create some turnovers. We may see Dean Marlowe or Abraham Wallace running one back. Jaquan Johnson getting that pick 6. We'll see, because Will Grier was pretty shaky, and I'm not sure he's ready for this moment. And Kyle Allen's not really, on top of the world either, as a guy who was undrafted, I believe, last year. And so there should be some opportunities for the secondary. I'm not that worried about really anything after the 2 series, after Cam comes out. Really, in general, I'm really hoping for another solid defensive game from this team. So from the Buffalo Bills, because I don't think, if you're taking Newton out, and I think McCaffrey too is another person who I don't think is going to be playing that much, because they have a running back battle with Cameron Artis-Payne, Reggie Bonifant, and then 2 rookies, the drafted Jordan Scarlett, and then the undrafted 4.72 speeded Elijah Holyfield from Georgia. And they're going to be battling for roster spots, so I don't think we're going to see a lot of McCaffrey. If I had McCaffrey, I wouldn't be using him much. So without those 2 guys in the offense, you're going to have some unheralded, so far, quarterbacks throwing to maybe DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel, but more likely a lot of Jarius Wright and Chris Hogan and, Terry Godwin. So I'm really hoping for a good performance. I am predicting, and a lot of people don't do this, I'm predicting a Bills preseason win. So Friday night, after you get done watching the preseason game, I'll be in Providence. You might be in Western New York somewhere. I think you're going to have something to look forward to and be happy about. And pray that there are no injuries in this game, because that's the most important thing. Number one, no injuries. Number two, Josh Allen looks pretty decent. Number three, that we picked the right Corey. And number 10, Puntapalooza. Where are we going to be at that? Number 10 of 5. What else would I say for the 10th thing out of 5 than Puntapalooza? Corey with an E, Bajorquez, going against Corey without the E, Carter. They are supposedly an even battle. Maybe even Bajorquez was ahead, but everything I've heard out of practice, I had seen things on Twitter that Corey Carter was probably the best of the 4 punters between the 2 teams in the joint practices this week with Carolina. Corey without the E, Carter, was better in the first preseason game, and I think that he's got a chance to win this job, possibly even early. They might let this go to the 4th week because you're allowed to do that, but I wouldn't be shocked if after this game, if Corey Carter, without the E, has a decent game, that they're going to say, we'll just take the roster spot and Carter's going to get all the kicks from now on. I think that he's outperformed him to that level, and I'm interested to see Puntapalooza finally come to an end. So, because I think the clear guy's there, unless we're going to go outside the team, and we don't like either of those guys. Who knows? Because probably about 26 punters are getting cut after the preseason, so we can make a move there. I mean, we did it last year very early in the season. I think it was like week 2 where we cut Colin Schmidt and signed Corey Bajorquez, who hadn't taken any preseason punts. So who knows what they're thinking as far as that goes. I think Corey without the E has surpassed Corey with the E in the battle, and I think he's going to be the punter, and I'm totally fine with that. But that's going to be the battle. That was 5 things that I am excited for in this preseason game. Week 2, 7 p.m. Friday, on your local affiliate that hopefully that you have and hasn't been blacked out by your local cable company or local dish company. I don't know what's going on there. I will be watching it out of market, probably on Game Pass. So I'll be able to see all the games. So if you don't have the game, go see it at a bar, follow it, and then listen to the coverage here. I can almost guarantee, and I won't put them on the spot, but I can almost guarantee that the boys at Cover One, the other podcast, the Cover One podcast, our brother podcast, will be posting post-game stuff pretty shortly after, whether it's that night or the next day. You'll probably get a short podcast then. You're going to get one out of me and Kevin on Monday when hopefully he's back from the beach. I'm pretty sure he is. So there's a lot to be excited for, and we're always going to give you that coverage here at cover1.net. Follow Cover One on Twitter. Follow me at Jason2the. Follow Kevin Masseri at his name, one word. I think that's all I have, guys, and I'm running out of breath. I haven't done a solo pod in a while, so I'm glad to do it, though. This was fun. As fun as you could have with just one person doing a pod. I'm looking forward to the game. So take care.